So, Amy, thank you for being with us. Can you say hello?
Hello, how are you?
Well, thank you for your time today. As you pull up your slides, can you give us a self-introduction?
Sure, hold on. I'm going to, am I requesting remote from you, I think, is that right?
Yeah, so I stopped share on my side. There you go.
Okay.
Right.
So, all right. Oh, okay. So can I give you a brief introduction? Is that what you said?
Yes, and keep trying to flip your slides. They haven't popped in yet.
Okay. Let's see, I don't see. I'm not seeing them.
Yeah, I'm not either. So I have it. I'm going to change one setting. I changed it to one participant can share at a time. So try it again.
Okay, hold on. I think I just messed up something now.
We promise people we practice this in advance.
Okay, I minimized it. Okay, I'm still not seeing it. I'm on the share screen.
Okay, let's see. If
This is
not, all right, we're going to share. I don't know, because I'm not sharing on my side, and if not, I can share the slides too.
No, I'm on share screen. Sorry about this, you all.
You should just be able to click on the green arrow.
Yeah.
And then you should see like like something should pop up, a Zoom thing with all your things on your desktop.
I have post. Yes, hold on real quick. Yes, but not on there. Yep, hold on real quick. Sorry about this, you all. It's just me trying to uh-oh. I know it's on here because I've pulled it up. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to let you do this because I literally was practicing it and
I know, we never know. It's like, let's see. So we've got it. Let's share from my side. Oh, let's show the video. There you go.
okay.
All right, here we go. We'll just give us a self-introduction.
There we go. Sorry about that, you all. Literally was just practicing it. Okay, so as Ginger told you, I'm Amy Drooker, VP, Chief Revenue Officer, clearly not Chief Technical Officer. I have been in the lottery industry for over 25 years. I've worked for 3 different lotteries and the Kentucky Lottery twice. I am a Kentucky native, born and raised, and then left in 95. I currently have a team of 56 people, which is about a third of our company. And I have 3 children, a husband, and you'll notice I say 2 precious dogs, not so much about everybody else. Just kidding. So anyway, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me today. As you just heard, I work for the Kentucky Lottery Corporation. I looked over today's agenda and all of the subject matter experts and the presentations, which required a number of you, I would say, to have difficult conversations regularly. And so I'm sure you're asking why me and why would I be an expert on difficult conversations? So I'm going to give you a condensed version of my why. As I said, I moved back to Kentucky in 2018 to run the field sales team for the Kentucky Lottery Corporation, and it is a third of the company. On its face, that doesn't seem like such a big deal. I've done this with 2 other lotteries, and I am a Kentucky native, so none of that was new to me. Seems easy peasy, right? But not so fast. I interviewed and I like to use a book by Michael Watkins, 90 days. I do 30, 60, 90s on everything. And so when I interviewed for this position, I remember asking, in that 3 to 4 hour interview, is this a turnaround or is this a reset? Why me? You have many 30-year veterans here. Why me? And then what are we going to do? And it was really just, a reset. We are a 30-year company, and, we need to make sure we're changing with the times. The lottery industry is not always the quickest, industry to move forward. And we just, need a new look at it. Right. Well, sure. I was told it was a reset, but it was more like turning around a cruise ship in the middle of a small channel at the Green River. It was not a reset. It was a complete turnaround. So as you can imagine, I had to be real confident immediately in having difficult conversations, because here was this person who had left the Kentucky Lottery as a 25-year-old and returned to the Kentucky Lottery in a very different role as a 48-year-old woman. And I had to tell a lot of people that had been doing this job for many, many years, that we were going to now do things differently. So again, having difficult conversations with confidence was something that I think I'd always had, but I certainly had to hone it. So next. Ginger. Great. So for me in this 5 years, but many years, there's really just been sort of 3 difficult conversations that I've had to focus on: performance, compensation, and then, personal, because we talk about, you leave personal things. You shouldn't bring your personal items or your personal concerns to work. But we all know on here that you spend more time, most of the time, doing professionally than sometimes you do with your family. So everything sort of, it all tracks on one another. I always like to say to people that if things are bad at home, they're probably not great at work. If things are not great at work, it's probably affecting home as well. So performance, compensation, and personal are the difficult conversations that I've found myself over many years, but certainly over the last 5 years, having to tackle. Next. So performance, having to completely do a turnaround. I've had a lot of performance conversations, and to sort of lighten the load and to really talk to my sales leaders, I start a lot of conversations with, let's remember, there's no one that wakes up in the morning and says, wow, I really want to fail today, right? No one does that. So the biggest thing we can do as leaders and through our conversations is to be specific and clear. If you're having a performance difficult conversation, because that's what we're talking about, then everybody's not necessarily going to be happy at the moment. And it's your job as a leader, when you're having these conversations, to make sure that you're on the right path to help the person that you're discussing a performance issue with. Next. And then choosing the right time and place. So we talk about a setting, again, just very elementary, stuff. Choosing, find a small conference room or a place that has a door where people can have, I've found where they can have privacy as well and be open and honest while you're having these conversations. So one of my personal experiences is I always have to, in past life, I've had to go to this one office, which you would think would be, going to the corner office. You would think it's a great place. You always want to go there. But it became clear to me in that job years ago that every time I had to go to the corner office, what I thought was going to be collaboration was not. And it was an office where everybody went by, and it seemed like it was an office where I always found I had to have a difficult conversation about something that I needed to do. So just make sure that it's a comfortable place, a place where people, they know that they can be themselves and have the conversation. Timing, make sure you have plenty of time, walking down a hallway and looking at someone and saying, oh, hey, I meant to have this discussion. You did X, Y, and Z. And I want to talk about that, but I only have 5 minutes. the person that you're having this conversation with, their time is just as important. And it's more important because you're trying to help them. And in most cases, you're trying to help and move something forward. And then, of course, scheduling. If it's a Monday, I don't know about everyone else, but my Mondays, when someone says, I'm going to put this on Monday, I'll say, oh, please don't put anything else on Monday. I won't be able to give you my time and attention because I'm pretty much scheduled from 8 in the morning, what feels like 6 o'clock at night, with some sort of, getting together for the week and getting ready. So just make sure that you have the time. It's a good time. It's not the busiest day of the week, and that you do it quick. We also use something called the 1-minute manager. Make sure you don't delay these conversations. People need to know specifically. Next. Prepare and gather information. As I just said before too, make sure that when you go into these difficult conversations, that you're prepared, that you understand exactly what it is you want for this person, what it is that you're trying to get across, what you're trying to solve, execute, whatever it is. Just make sure that you gather the relevant data. I kind of always, we joke a little bit about this at work. If I'm having a riff with my partner, I don't say to him, if it's immediately about, not loading the dishwasher, then I don't talk about the 15 things that he did 6 days ago and pile that on, because it's not relevant to right at that moment. So make sure when you're having these conversations that all of your examples support your points and that you're not piling on. You understand, be very specific. How can anyone, if you're having a difficult conversation, 9 times out of 10, you're trying to fix something, you're trying to get to the next best place. And if people don't understand what the objective is, where you're starting and where you want to get to at the end, and they don't have these concrete examples and observable behaviors, how do they know how to be successful? How do they know how to meet your expectations? So be very specific. It's something that we use. I told you in the beginning, when I started here, there were lots of conversations that we had to have around performance and how we were going to do things differently. And so sometimes I had to have a really difficult conversation about, we've talked about this, it's not moving in that right way. How did I follow up with it? Well, everyone's had to, worked with their HR departments, no matter where you've worked, and they talk about documentation, but that didn't really exist for my use of what I was trying to do. So what we put together was behavior observation. And I believe one of the regional managers used that at another one of a company they'd worked at, and they brought it to me. And I said, this is great, because what I could do was say, this is what I've observed, or any one of us could. This is what we've observed, and this is the expectation. So after we've gathered all this information, then we are having these conversations. We were able to follow it up, so everyone was on the same page through this observation document, and they could follow, the way that they could get to the other side. Next, please. And clarity, again, same thing, talking about the behavior observation document when discussing performance concerns, just be clear and specific, non-judgmental languages, focus on behaviors rather than maybe, something that you see, this understandings and defensiveness. I mean, who among us has not come into a conversation where that it might be difficult, whether you're having it or you're receiving it, that the first thing, human instinct, is to be defensive and say, I didn't do that. That didn't happen, So be very careful when you're giving these clear and specific examples, that you aren't judging, that you are merely stating facts as much as you can, and that you're again, there's lots of clarity, very specific around it. Next, please. Share perspective. Absolutely. One of the things that that I talk about all the time. And yes, I am human. Sometimes I will get feedback and I immediately, just like we talked about, want to be defensive about it. And there's something that we say, our HR person says, and I love it, and I use it a lot, is that feedback is a gift. And yes, sometimes it does not feel good to hear that you aren't firing on all cylinders, or maybe there's something better you can do. But again, it's all about an open dialogue. So be prepared when you're having these difficult conversations to make sure that you're letting the person share their perspective and that you're listening. Don't just jump in and say that didn't happen. Let them finish, give them the grace and the time to tell you from their perspective. Maybe they were looking at this in an entirely different way. And once you were clear and specific about your examples through this performance conversation, then it gives them time to walk through it and hear your feedback, give you feedback. And then again, at the end of the day, what you're trying to get to is resolution and a manageable situation for everyone. Next, please. Okay, this one. So we'll move to compensation. It is always, yes, it is the most sensitive and challenging topic. I always am perplexed. And by perplexed, I mean by myself as well, as to why asking for the thing that helps us do all the other things, be with our significant others, our dogs, take our trips, fund our hobbies, all of the things, why it's so hard then to go and ask for increased compensation or to talk about your worth. So here's a few things that I've done. I've certainly had to do that. And, and then things that I encourage the people that work with me or my teammates or that don't work for me at all to do. Next, please. So gather information. Our company, when I, again, told you, just got back here, had to, turn everything around. When I got here, the sales team had not had a merit raise or a market adjustment for 10 years. So, there was lots of discussion and dialogue around that. We just thankfully finished a large consulting year-long consultation on market adjustments and where we are, our positions are positioned in the Kentucky market. And they did a great job. They really did. And I spent lots of time with them, and I was grateful for the opportunity to talk to them about what this team does and how this team is they're not only salespeople, they're billing people, they're security people, they're operations people, they're auditors, they're everything. They're a jack of all trades because they're the face of our company. So they're everything to all of our customers, not only retail facing, but also our players, the customers of our retailers. And so I was grateful to be able to give them that perspective. And I've done every sales job at a lottery too. So I'm also able to offer that perspective. But what I also did in addition to research this and to make sure that they were well represented was I went out and I gathered my own information from the different places that we'd lost employees to over, especially in the last couple of years where jobs, where everybody could find a job. If they wanted a new one, they were out there, especially in sales. So I went to all of those places and I gathered their compensation packages, from cars to bonuses to any benefits, all of those things. And then I also sent that forward. So to make sure that when we did this big, this big adjustment, that we had all the information that we needed to make sure that people were compensated appropriately. And that's no different if you're doing it for yourself. Next, please. And then choose the right time. Timing is crucial. I always kind of, we laugh about it. if it's Friday afternoon at 4, it's probably not the right time to, to ask someone or go over why you believe that, you should be compensated at a different time, but also to avoid discussing compensation during busy or stressful times. So if last week, I just moved my daughter to Denver, and we had our sales conference, which was 57 people plus another 20 from the corporate office. And I had presenters coming in from out of town, lots of different things. If someone had come to me on Wednesday morning before our sales conference started, and I knew I had all these things and asked me to go over that, they wouldn't have gotten the best from me. So remember, avoid discussing during busy or stressful times to make sure that it can be a thorough discussion, and everything, all the research you've put together is duly noted and considered. Next, please. Sharpen your gaze. Oh my goodness, no kidding. So we are in the middle of our yearly performance evaluations right now. And so when I did start this job, we've now taken on a whole different performance review system, which is great. But when I got there were a lot of feelings. In 2018, they handed me all these reviews, and I said, well, I don't know yet. I haven't been here but 3 months. I can't really look at this. And of course, there were other people looking at it. I don't mean to say that at all. But what I did read, the very first thing I noticed was that it was a lot of feelings and around the contributions and achievements, but there really weren't a lot of contributions and achievements. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't happen. They did. They just didn't know how to articulate that in this platform, right? So, and how to accentuate the positive and their specific projects, the things they've done in their community. But all of these things are necessary if you're going to have that difficult conversation for a compensation adjustment. Next, please. And then again, all the stuff we just talked about, explaining yourself, why you believe your compensation adjustment is warranted, use your data and examples, explain your responsibilities, focus on the win-win for the company and you, talk about how you've saved the company money. Those are all things, again, about sharpening your gaze. One of the things, again, we do 30, 60, 90s for almost everything. And if we interview anybody, we always tell them, bring your 30, 60, 90 so we can understand all of this. But we also talk a little bit about having a walking around deck. So for me, what I try to do is have 4 slides. I don't know that anybody necessarily wants to see it, but if they do, I want to be able to say, this is what I'll be working on in FY24, either by quarter or just for the fiscal year. But these are the things that I'm strategizing about and I'm working on to the side that will benefit the company and or the community. Next, please. And then personal. Again, we talked about this in the beginning of personal bleeds over into professional, professional bleeds into personal. Addressing issues open and honestly, it's essential for maintaining healthy relationships. Again, it doesn't matter where you are, either at the office or, at home. Next, please. And this applies to everything. We talked about it professionally, and we talked a little more granular about office spaces or with a door kind of thing, but it doesn't matter where you're doing this, whether it's compensation, professional or personal. Comfort is king. Avoiding public places or situations where peers or friends or someone might overhear it. You want to set yourself up for all of these conversations, no matter what, to be successful. I mean, after all, you are going into a difficult conversation and you want something, you're hoping for something positive, one way or the other, to come out of these conversations. Next, please. There's nothing different, really more than professional, is that you want to be prepared, except for then in personal, what I have found over the years is just that you don't script an entire conversation, but sort of like we talked about earlier too, you do need to know what you want to accomplish, no matter what you want to fix, because you can't be all over the page. And again, if you're mad about the dishwasher not getting empty, you can't talk about the washer and dryer and the 18 other things that happened 6 months ago. So to have the most success and to make sure that everybody walks away in a better place, because that's what most people start out doing. You want to just make sure that you have 2 or 3 points so you can stay on task and not run away. Next, please. And then, of course, we've all heard this emotional intelligence, one-on-one, and it's so difficult to do, is not using the I statements. I do this at work too. I try not to use, I try to use I statements and you. And the other thing I try to do a lot is consistently, and I'm sure everyone else has heard this a million times, to say, if I heard you correctly, what I heard you say was this. And that a lot of times will eliminate any sort of confusion and turn a really difficult conversation into much more manageable. But taking ownership of what it is you're trying to get to. And I think personally, it's really no different. You're just saying, I feel this way when this happens. And just like professionally, you're not pointing a finger. It doesn't feel so defensive, and you'll get what you need. Next, please. And then active listening. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You have to show empathy. I said this before. It is our nature as human beings to look at anything that is different, doesn't walk, talk, sound like us, for our sort of animal instinct to be leery of it, to maybe not be as open and empathetic, but just making sure you're listening, being empathetic, hearing someone else's perspective and their point of view, and acknowledging those feelings and their perspective. It goes a long way to understanding and openness, and certainly, again, handling difficult situations and making a difficult situation more manageable. Next, please. And then somewhere in the middle, this is funny. I was having a conversation yesterday, and this was professionally, about something that needed to be fixed. And this person said, I think it's maybe time for a civil discourse meeting, which is true. It is time for a civil discourse meeting. And in that meeting, the thing, whether it's professional and at home, I've certainly found at home over the years, you have to figure out a way to meet in the middle. Most people will meet you, 90% of the people will meet you halfway in your life, and that's what they want, or that's been my experience. So figuring out and collaborating, whether it's personally or professionally, to improve a situation, and considering other people's needs and feelings, is almost always a great way to turn a difficult conversation into manageable and exceptional. Next, please. Controlling your emotions. That's hard to do personally, and probably an easier space to get away with that for sure. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. If you do some of these things, you jot your 3 points down and you stay with those and you can look at them. You cannot plan for everything. So please don't think I'm saying that in any way, but certainly if you understand you're in a difficult conversation, then continue to go back to, those things of hearing and active listening and listening to other people's perspective and taking a moment to make sure you keep yourself together. Next, please. So my key takeaways were, just being prepared, but that's across anything. Yes, it's probably very important. Well, it's important in all 3 difficult conversations that you may have: professionally, compensation conversations, and personal. Clear expectations. I always say, when we're training new employees to our regional managers, they'll say, why 30 days? And I'm like, well, it's just 30 days when they're starting. If they don't understand what your clear expectations are, how will they be successful? They have to know what the person who is coaching them and going to do their evaluation at the end of the year, what they expect, so they can meet that, ask questions, and be crystal clear. And then lead with empathy. I've talked about that before. It's not always easy, and I'm not saying that I jump right out there and do that every time, but it is always top of mind, and I try and bring myself back there. And then, of course, the platinum principle. I grew up, I'm sure many of us did, hearing treat people the way you want to be treated. And that's not necessarily true. And I've certainly found that it's not true for me is that I need to treat people the way they want to be treated. And when you go into difficult conversations, treating people the way they want to be treated, my experience has been that they come out much better. And again, as I said, much more manageable and more and positive in a positive light. Next, please. So thank you for listening. Again, this is my experience. These are the things that have helped me have confidence when I go into these conversations. And I appreciate your time.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation.
Thank
We've
you.
received a few questions that have come in on our chat. So I'm going to start kind of go in order because this one came in early in your presentation. And Anna says, I manage hourly employees and we are struggling with staffing. How can I speak to employees about performance and attendance when we also can't afford to lose staff?
Interesting. And it is a great question. So we believe it. I only have one hourly, and actually I don't have an hourly employee anymore. She retired and we're moving that position to not be hourly. But what I do work with regularly and where I am at the lottery and what I'm responsible for are sales. So you can imagine, and I can imagine what you're talking about through COVID. Our retailers, we had many stores that were open 24 hours and they may have had two people, and that was across the board. It wasn't not only chain, it was our independent retailers. They were working 24 hours if they were open 24 hours or 18-hour days living there. And so we would have to ask them, there's certain things they have to do in order to make extra money from us. And I guess the long and the short is we had to have the difficult conversations. We had them. I had to have them just one, and we had to have them with a couple of people, I believe, that I heard some of my colleagues talk about. What I always start with is what's keeping you from getting to whatever it is, like showing up, whatever those conversations might be for you. I try to start every conversation with what's keeping you from getting there and seeing if I can remove the obstacles for them first, or if there's something I can do better to remove that obstacle. That's what I try to do. And then when you get to certain places, and then you have to look at the reward and the payoff. And if you have to have someone there, only what your situation is, at that point, you have to, you've got to do what's best for you or the company.
That's wonderful. Well, here's another. We've had a few more questions that have come in through the chat. And our next one from Lauren says, how have you learned to not take those conversations home with you? Sometimes they gut me. I never host these conversations on Monday or Friday.
So again, I deal with all people in the field. I do have like 4 people at the corporate office that are actually there with me. I've always been in sales, so everybody's always in the field and rarely in an office. Short answer is I don't. My husband would like for me to do better. I don't. I feel like I always have. I was on vacation, like I said, trying to move my daughter into Denver, and a couple of things happened, and I, got phone calls, and I had to have them. And I haven't figured that out 5 years in. What I have done though is put some people in place that I'm very, very comfortable with, who have been there a long time and know what to do. So what I've tried to do is delegate some of that so I can go a little more strategic and less day to day. So I've tried to delegate some of that and talk to them about what's a good time. And I want them to have, I want the people that work with me to have a good work-life balance. And we know there's exceptions to all of that all the time, right? But we try not to. I want them to have that. So I try and tell them, if it's after 5, don't. I haven't figured it out. I should have just said that in the beginning. I haven't figured it out yet.
Well, I think we have time for maybe one more question. And this question comes from Rebecca, and then we'll ask you for final thoughts. And Rebecca says, any good advice on managing peer conflicts? Sometimes there's no right or wrong.
Oh gosh, I think you must have been put here to help me get through some of that. Rebecca, what I try to do is just what we talked about in the discussion, try and find the right team, the right time to have these discussions. In the beginning, in this big turnaround, and I'm just talking about the most relevant, and I probably did it before, when I couldn't get people to meet me where I was, I'd copy people. That's not a good way to do it. That gets your peers upset. So I try to do the same thing that I talked about before. What's keeping us from getting to where we need to be? Ultimately, we're here. You have a job to do. In this department, I have a job to do. Here's what the company's goal is. This is what our mission literally says on the website. So we both have to get there. So what can I do? What's keeping you from getting there with me? And then what can I do to get to where you need? And usually I just start with that question, is what's keeping us from being where we need to be, and how can I change my behavior? But then I'm also very honest about what I need. And I generally come with at least 3 things jotted down, and I try to just do 1 or 2 at a time. And then I reschedule another meeting to get the next.
Well, that's wonderful advice. Thank you so much. Well, thanks for your wonderful presentation. So as we wrap, do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom today?
I think just what I said. I don't think you can say enough about empathy, especially over the last, 2 to 3 years. I just don't think you can say enough about trying to understand, even if you don't want to, because you're busy and you just want it to be over with and it needs to happen, to try and understand where another human being is coming from, and that as human beings, we all deserve respect and kindness, and then we'll figure the other stuff out later.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.